Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. Very excited to join you today for Get Your Branding Gear and Fuel Your Career with special guest, Curt Mercadante. Now, Curt and I go back a little ways. I've watched Curt, fuel his career and get his branding gear for many, many years very successfully. I'm very excited to bring you Curt Mercadante today to chat about how to leverage your brand to increase your impact and influence and get your branding gear. Now, if you've never seen me before, my name is Aaron Urban or Coachy Urban. You can learn more about me right here at coachyurban.com. And what I do is I help driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks to increase their impact, influence, and income. So let's talk a little bit about Curt while he's not here. Ha ha ha. So Curt Mercadante is an authority branding expert. Okay, he helps business owners and driven, successful professionals increase their brand exposure to the right clients to make more money. Now, this also applies to you folks who might be in transition or looking for that ideal career. So you can connect to the right companies and fuel your brand to increase your career growth. And we're going to talk exactly about what that looks like for you as a professional, whether you are considering an entrepreneurship or not. If you're considering being a great corporate person, moving up the ladder, this is the right place for you to be this morning. Now, if you are just tuning in, please say hi, say your name, say where you're from. I would love to say hi to you this great morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are joining in from in the world. And hello from KC, says someone from Facebook. And by the way, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So please do say your name, say hi. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, the Career Coffee Chat podcast is on all major channels, including YouTube. So Curt Mercadante, for more than 25 years, has counseled small business entrepreneurs and driven successful professionals, as well as some of the largest corporations and associations in the country, on how to build an authority brand. He's built 3 profitable businesses, including a 7-figure public relations and advertising agency. And he's also the author of the best-selling book, 5 Pillars of the Freedom Lifestyle. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Curt Mercadante. Curt, it's great to have you on the show. Career Coffee Chat
Aaron,
Show with Mercadante.
It is great to be here, even with my weak Wi-Fi. I'm here in the secluded, my nondescript, undisclosed location here in the mountains. So thank you so much for having me today.
You know what, though? You're living the freedom lifestyle, Curt, and that's what it's all about. Truly it is. I mean, last week I was working from Colorado. I was technically on vacation, but and it's wonderful that we can now, particularly during these challenging times, be able to work from anywhere basically that we want to, as long as we have decent Wi-Fi. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation on how to get your branding gear and fuel your career. And we have a few folks that are tuning in so far on our Career Coffee Chat show. We've got Paula. She's tuning in. We got Julie May is tuning in from Facebook. So we, again, are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I'm very excited. So, Curt, I have a big question for you. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Fire it at me.
So what the heck is a brand anyway? And why should we care?
Yeah, right. Well, a lot of people in this day and age think of brand and they think of flashiness, or they think of some tool or some tactic. Or I did a video yesterday that, the NFL is back, and a lot of people look at athletes and they talk about professional athletes' brands, and they think about what they're posting on Instagram or their hair color. Odell Beckham, his hair color, and that differentiates his brand. The thing is that the athletes with the strongest brands are actually in that position because they can catch a ball, they can pass a ball, they can score a basket. They're very good at what they do. All the greats, LeBron, Michael, Magic, Larry in basketball, they could have had whatever hair color they wanted, piercings, all that stuff. It wouldn't have mattered. No one would have known who they were if they didn't build championship teams, if they didn't have those skills. And so the greatest thing when I think about the greats and using athletes as an example is that they made the people around them better. They actually had an impact. And when you were on my show, we talked about influence and impact. And the one word I like to use to describe brand is influence. And a lot of people think of influence as exerting influence over somebody, right? Now, Bob Berg, author, best-selling Go-Giver series of books, he's become a friend over the past year. And he's got a great line. He said, how far can you push a rope? And so it's more about the pull, having a positive impact on your world around you, on other people, which, by the way, should be the definition of a business, having a positive impact, whether you're selling golf balls or widgets, right? Or high-end consulting. You have that positive impact. You draw people to you. You have that influence. That's what your brand is all about. You communicate that positive impact to the ideal clients, and then you're in business in terms of taking that brand, getting leads, and turning it into more revenue in the form of the ideal client.
Right. So for the person who is not interested in having a business per se, like entrepreneur,
Yes.
like you, yourself, and myself, and we're really just interested in moving up the career ladder, that brand is still important.
Absolutely.
However, some people aren't quite sure what that looks like for them and how to leverage it and what does that mean. I think you touched on a few key points. Number one is making a positive impact, right? So for you, what would you say to those people who are looking to build their brand to fuel their career, not necessarily a business, but a lot of the same things still apply? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do a quarterly virtual authority brand boot camp, and I have a few people in my boot camp now who aren't looking to sell a product or a service. They're looking to up-level their career. And they go through the same exact process as the entrepreneurs. Because for whatever reason, when we think of it in terms of our career, it's easy to fall back into, well, here's the process, and I just send out 100 resumes, and I wait for people to come back, and if they don't hit, that's the process, and there's nothing I can do. But really, up-leveling your career, getting a new job is branding and sales 101. What if instead of just sending out 100 general resumes in the industry we want, we identify our ideal client, our ideal employer, and really focus like heck on those? What do they look like? What are the people there that we're going to interview with? Because just like sales, even if you're selling B2B, which I hate because all sales and branding is P2P, person to person. When you're looking at a job, guess what? You're going to sit across the desk from another human being, not from just some corporate logo. So we put together, who is your ideal customer persona? Your customer being those ideal employers where you want to work, where the impact you provide fits them best. And you get down really radically focused on identifying who those are, and you go after them with what I call your impact story. Some people call it value proposition. I call it your impact story. What's that one sentence that clearly communicates the positive impact your client or your potential employer gets from working with you? That's why I've taken heat. I always tell people, don't put on LinkedIn as your headline. If you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, don't put your job title. Put your impact story. If you're looking for a job and people call me mean and they say, yeah, I don't care about people, well, I want people to find work. Don't just put looking for work, looking for new opportunities, right? If I'm possibly in the market to hire someone for this and I see that looking for new opportunities, John Smith, I scroll on by. Right? That's a vanilla statement. Yeah, exactly. If your impact story, though, is I help, small to medium business or small, medium IT companies level up or whatever it is, right? You're communicating impact. And me as an employer says, John or Jane Smith, wow, they could help my company do X. Let me look more. Oh, wow, they're looking for work. You bring them in with what they want.
Right.
And then when they come in, you do that call. Then you show them what they need. That's when you make that connection.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And that's what I tell all my clients is first you need to know what your target is. Because without your target, without your ideal role, your ideal job type, industry, whatever that is you're focusing on, you can't express how you're going to bring value. You need to be able to express that. So your headline on LinkedIn, for example, is your billboard, is your advertising statement as a professional. What is the value that an employer can expect if they're going to hire you. And you don't need to put open to work or looking for new opportunities. LinkedIn has done some great changes, and one of those is the hashtag open to work. You can put that on there. I even see consultants leveraging that because they're looking for business and they know that they will come up in searches for either in Sales Navigator and in LinkedIn Recruiter. So that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, for you, what I would ask, if, for those people who aren't quite sure, right? I know, okay, great, I got it. Curt and Aaron, oh, I need to create a brand. Wonderful, thanks. What the heck do I do? Okay, I know I need to talk about my value proposition, but what if I do something wrong? What are some of the mistakes you see when people are trying to build their brand?
Yeah, so some we've already talked about. It's just communicating job title or looking for work in sales industry. Well, or looking for work in tech industry, right? That's vanilla, and you're speaking to everyone in the tech industry rather than communicating that value. So once you have that strong brand foundation, then you look at the process of how do I efficiently and effectively deliver that impact message to my ideal clients. And you get there, or your ideal employers. You get down, and by the way, I like to think if you're looking for a job, think of them in terms of clients. It will get you in that mode that I'm not just out there looking and begging for people. I'm offering impact. They're going to hire me, and there's no difference between an employer hiring you and a client hiring you if you have your own business. So you get really radically focused on what those, not only those companies look like, those employers, but also the person at those employers, because sometimes we just focus on sending it to the HR person. But really, maybe you have more success communicating through the CEO or the CIO or the CTO or the director of whatever, right? Don't always think you just got to send it to the HR person. Go to the people who you're going to directly provide impact to. It's something I tell entrepreneurs and business owners as well. So then you roll together that process where a lot of people start with is, and this is true for just about everything, is the tools and the tactics, right? Resume is a tool. Sending it out is a tool. Whatever service you use is a tool. All those things are tools. Without the strong foundation, they're not going to matter. So you can send out 1,000 resumes, and if it's the wrong message to the wrong potential employer, it's not going to matter. And in everything you do, remember this. So I did a video last week about the Karate Kid. And I was watching it with my kids, and I did a video as it relates to building your business and selling, but it certainly applies. All these lessons apply to up-leveling your career. What if Mr. Miyagi had said to Daniel, hey, Daniel, guess what? I'm going to teach you to wax my car, paint my fence, and sand my floor, and in the end, you'll know some karate. Daniel would have said, forget it, man. He would have walked the other way. But we often do exactly what Mr. Miyagi, what I said he would have done, right? We sell process, whether you're selling a product or a service or whether you're selling yourself. And we do what I call verbally vomit our background, our experience, where we went to school, how the sausage is made, and whatever we're doing, right? And in the end, the person's like, okay, we overwhelm them with that. And they're thinking, I just want to hire someone who just takes my problems away, rather than creates more problems. You're communicating process, you're over here. What's going to differentiate you is that impact, right? Whatever you do, when you're posting content on LinkedIn, when you're coming up with your LinkedIn headline, when you're coming up with that impact story, when you're sitting in front of that employer, most people go in there and they talk about themselves and they talk about everything on their resume. What if you went in there and interviewed the person on the other side of the desk? When I teach entrepreneurs to do the sales call, the first call is about them. You share your impact story, say, would it be worth 20 minutes to you to get on another call to learn how we can help you? Yes. But that second call, I call the interview call, because you get on that call, you take charge and you say, listen, I would like to know about what are your goals and challenges heading into the next, or what are your goals and challenges for the person who fills this position? Let them talk. You're probably going to be one of the only people who went in there and let them talk and ask them what they want. That's going to differentiate you from the 10 resumes of people, of competitors who might have the same experience, background, and education you have, but you went in. Not only did you allow those people, your potential employers, to talk about themselves, which people love to do, in doing so, they probably gave you the keys to the kingdom in terms of exactly what they need from you, so that when they say, how can you help me? You can connect the dots between what you offer and exactly what they need. It's different than what we normally do, which is, here's all about me. Here's the process. Here's what I provide. Here's my background. Here's my education. Instead, make it about your potential employer.
And that's huge, Curt, because nobody does that. You're right. Most people go into the interview process and they think they're going to the Spanish Inquisition and they have this light over their head and they're going to be asked a whole bunch of questions and people can read your mind. And that's not true. Number one, they can't read your mind. They only know what you tell them. And also, are you speaking value? Because quite frankly, as a hiring manager, if I've done my due diligence, I probably already read most of your resume. I've already looked you up on LinkedIn. I already have an idea whether you're an ideal candidate or not, or you wouldn't even be there talking to me. So what can you do to differentiate yourself and stand out and speak that values language? And most importantly, ask those big questions that help you help them and vice versa, and also help you avoid situations where you might be jumping from the frying pan into the fire. And this happens quite a bit because on both sides of the fence, we're selling, right? They're selling you, you're selling yourself, they're selling their company to you. We want to hire you. We're great. We're wonderful. We have no problems, which is BS. We all know that. Everybody has problems. So when you start interviewing them and start asking them, hey, what's your biggest pain point? If I was to solve one problem for you, what would that look like? And some of these really deep, meaningful questions that say, tell the person on the other end of the table or the other end of the camera in this case, that you care, that you give a crap, which is really important to them. It also allows you a lot of insights as a job seeker as to what you can expect from these individuals, right? And the engagement is so important, particularly because right now, not everybody is super comfortable in front of a camera. So for those of you tuned in, when you're thinking about your brand, what are some roadblocks that you see? And hi, Christine. I want to say hi to you. Tuning in from New York. Woohoo! Yeah. So for those of you who are tuning in or have tuned in later, please do pop your comments and your questions in the comments section. We will answer them. We're happy to get back to you if you're watching later, if you're watching the replay. But I want to hear from you. What are your top roadblocks when it comes to talking about your brand? Because, Curt, people really struggle with that. They struggle to articulate their impact, number one. That's what I see in all my coaching clients. Almost everyone struggles to do that. And then we live in a society of tell. We like to tell people things, everything. We don't ask questions very easily. So what are some tips that you can give people to kind of loosen up and move into that space where you have that curious, inquisitive nature?
Yeah, I mean, some people are naturally curious and inquisitive, and some people aren't. For anyone who has a fear, I use the phone a lot in selling, and I teach a process with my clients on how to use the phone better. Because to me, using the phone is branding as well. It's free advertising. You leave 3 voicemails for someone over a month. Guess what? That didn't cost you a thing. And they've heard your name, your company, and your impact story. But I have a certain amount of fear using the phone, just like most people. I still do it. And whenever I get fearful about getting on the phone or meeting with someone, it's because I'm thinking, and you hit the nail on the head with this, it's, what if they ask this? What if they ask this? What if they don't like where I went to school? I know a client that I've had who was worried because he was in the financial space and he was younger than some other people. What if they think that I don't have enough experience to do that? What you have to realize is, like, for instance, when I do sales calls, when I freelance and I think I got to be creative and I got to answer every question that they ask, I get nervous because then I'm thinking about how am I going to over prepare? What am I going to do? Right? I once, so in my previous life, I had a PR and ad agency. And I remember when I did radio interviews, guess what I had? I had a script and I had talking points and I knew the general topic, right? And I would get on there and so they'd say, what color is the sky? And if it was blue or gray, I would bring it back, right, to what I wanted to talk about. And so a lot of people, for instance, when you get on a call or you get in well, how can you help me? Well, let's talk about your goals and challenges, right? You're kind of answering the question, but you're playing it on your turf. So you have that in front of you. If you make it about the other person and their goals and challenges and ask questions, then guess what? You don't have to worry as much about being creative and how am I going to do this and how am I going to sell the fact that I went to X college instead of the Ivy League college, because I tell this to my entrepreneurial clients. If you're losing based on price or you're losing based on years of experience, then somewhere along the line, you didn't communicate impact. Now, if you lose on impact, right, then that's it. If you're unable to deliver that impact, right, but if you do your job, Steve Jobs knew this, right? He said, we're not going to win by talking about our bells, our whistles, our megahertz, our gigahertz, or we're not going to talk about Windows. It's going to be about talking about a vision that is more clear, that communicates impact. And he came up with a vision statement: people with impact can change the world. There's nothing in there about a computer, an iPad, an iPod, whatever. That hadn't even been invented yet. It communicated impact. When you need to play on the turf of defense, of defending your education, of defending your experience, of defending your age, of defending all these things, it's nerve-wracking when you go into these things. But if you go in and say, well, listen, all that's fine. It is what it is. I can't change that. But I'm going to find out what they want, and you let them talk. Guess what? A 20-minute call, I tell this to my clients. When I do sales calls, right? I call them the interview story. It's 20 minutes. They talk for 15. It's the easiest thing in the world. I just ask like 3 or 4 questions and let them talk. It takes away the stress, the fear, and the trepidation of having to go in there and, like you said, tell and defend and explain and be creative.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got worked up there, and I
you did. You know, so we're knocked your camera over. That's passion, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Italian. I talk with my hands, and sometimes
I know, me too. I've learned to constrain myself, so I talk like I talk like a T-Rex now. You know, I keep my hands here. Some T-Rex somewhere is terribly offended by that. So Diane Wilson asked, what if your brand is what not to do versus what to do? In other words, risk avoidance. So she's, you know, probably, I know Diane, she's a client of mine, and she's in the risk avoidance structure. So in you know, trying to make good things out of not so good situations sometimes, or, you know, trying to avoid, you know, issues. And what I would encourage you to do, and Curt, please do chime in, Diane, is to focus on the positive outcomes of what you do. Like, for example, my husband is a reliability engineer. Now, he's one of the top premier reliability engineers for subsea, oil and gas. And basically what he does is he makes sure the Deepwater Horizon doesn't happen again and the world doesn't blow up. So it's a lot of risk avoidance. In his words, he says, I'm predictor of doom and gloom. And so that's what he does most of the time. But on the positive side, think about the risk you have avoided. So focus on the positives in what you're talking about versus the negatives. Curt, what do you have us think about that?
Yeah, when you get into, so the question is, what if, you know, my brand is more about what not to do than what to do? That's actually not your brand. That's getting into the process of specifically what you do. So for instance, I have a bookkeeping client, and we were joking last week, not joking, it was true. He asked me how I got my bookkeeper, and I told him, and, you know, my wife used to do my bookkeeping, and it was literally the one source of arguments that we would have. And I mentioned that to him. He said, oh my gosh, you don't know how many marriages I've saved, because I work with family-based businesses where, say, the husband or the wife is running the business and the husband or the wife is doing bookkeeping. And it's the one source of fights because it's money. He said, so I said, stop. So the impact you have has nothing to do with books, finances, whether you use Xero or QuickBooks. Guess what your impact is? When you work with with family-based businesses, you help them reduce conflict and save their marriages. He's like, oh my gosh. So when we talk about impact, again, it's not the process. I have an elite personal trainer, and he was so focused on trying to differentiate himself. He's 40 years old. He's not a big muscle-bound guy. He works more on movement, how to differentiate yourself. And so he would go, he's like, here's what we do, and we do this in the process. It was all about process. And he said that was his brand. No. His impact story is, I help high-achieving women executives look better, feel better, and move better. Right. So it's the impact that they walk away with rather than that. So even if you're in risk management, right? I have a client who's in 401k and health benefits. I said, you're not in the 401k and health benefits business. Why he works with like manufacturing, small to mid-sized manufacturing firms. He's like, they just don't want to deal with red tape and headaches, and they want to take care of their employees, right? They don't want the prospectus. They don't care about the details. They don't care about how the sausage is made. So his brand isn't about 401k and benefits. It's about reducing headaches and letting business owners sleep at night. So you don't want to play on that field of really getting into what you do and how you do it. It needs to be the why and that end result they walk away with.
Right. I mean, just like with my branding statement that probably anybody who's listened to a Career Coffee Chat live or my podcast has heard a million times. I help driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks so they can achieve more impact, influence, and income. That's it. I don't talk about, and I do career clarity and I do this growth and we do transition and resumes and da-da-da-da-da. I don't go through the process. I talk about the outcome of what it is, what my brand delivers. And for anybody who is looking whether to be an entrepreneur or to be, grow your career, that's extremely important. And if you're struggling with that space, let's just say, Curt, a lot of people right now are pivoting, right? They've been doing one thing for X amount of years and they realize that industry is not doing well.
Right.
Or for whatever reason, socioeconomic issues we have right now, they need to find a different brand, if you will. What advice would you give them when they're kind of not really starting from scratch?
Yeah, the first question is always why. I mean, that sounds cliche, but why do you want to switch? Is it money? Is it something deeper? Is it, I talk to a lot of people who haven't been happy with their industry or what they're doing specifically for 15 years. And they traded away freedom and fulfillment for a sense of security that they now realize was an illusion. So in that case, it's got to be, okay, well, I don't like this industry and I don't like what I've been doing and I want to switch. Okay, that's your why. Now, what do you really want to do? Defining where you really want to go, not according to what's quote unquote rational or practical, right? And not according to other people's expectations, which is why a lot of people start or pursue certain careers. What do you really want to do and why do you really want to do it? And to get there, reverse engineering to today. So you set that clear vision for where you want to go, then you reverse engineer it. So you put together that runway. So I've worked with some people who want to, say, build a side hustle or they want to go somewhere else, right? And they keep starting and stopping for like 10, 15 years, right? I always start going that way and then I draw back because what they're trying to do is it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall, right? You can't plan to your vision and that end goal. You have to define it and work backwards and reverse engineer it to today. Right. And when you do that, remember in the olden days, Aaron, you and I talk a lot about travel, right? But remember in the olden days before GPS and Google Maps, you actually had to take a paper map and put it down on the table and put a pin where you wanted to go. And then what'd you do? You reverse engineered. Yeah, right. But you reverse engineer that route, right? Or route, depending on what you say, where in the world you are. But you do that. And then as you're driving, there's roadblocks or there's construction, and then you dealt with it from there, but you have the map and you've planned it out. Now, Google Maps does the same thing for you. Maybe that's why we're so used now to just, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to plan from here. You haven't reversed engineered it, so you don't know the terrain. You don't know how long it's going to take. You haven't set milestones along the way and all those things, and you haven't built an adaptability to deal with construction or roadblocks when they pop up. Now it's all done for us. Well, with your career, with your life, you have to set that clear vision for where you want to go and then reverse engineer it. It is all in the reverse engineering, because when you try to move forward, it's just throwing stuff against the wall and saying, well, that didn't work, this didn't work. You know what? I'm just going to go stay in my W-2 job or get another job in my industry that's safe.
Right. And most people are thinking 3 to 5 years ahead. And I would challenge you instead to think long term. Think globally, think long term, and then work your way back. What do you want to do? What's the feeling that you want to have? Because at the fruition of our life, now here's, I'm really going out there right now. At the fruition of your life, and you're looking back over your life, what do you want to say you've accomplished? and then design your life and career around that. Because quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we all need to pay the bills. Yes, we all need to have some sort of sense of career fulfillment. No, it will not be roses and sunshine every day. And at the fruition of our life, isn't it most important that we look back and have a good feeling about what we've accomplished, where we've been, what we've done, how we've been, who we are? That is the meat and potatoes. Because Curt, we're trained in school as young little kids to look for the next, and then the next, and the next. And we go to college, and we get the degree, and then we go into the job, and the open door, open door, open door. One day we wake up, hopefully, and crap.
Right.
What am I doing? And I don't like this. I don't like who I am either. So, and then people call me and you and say, how do we figure this out? So Curt, if you don't mind, speaking of freedom lifestyle, you have a book. Would you like to chat about that for a second?
Yeah, and that's a great segue into it, because so the book I wrote was 5 Pillars of the Freedom Lifestyle. And it's a roadmap in the form of the 5 pillars to follow to really get where you want to go. You don't have to quit your job. I had one client who thought he had to quit his job. No, he had to deal with and fix the other parts of his life. There's 3 facets to your life: work, family, and self. And the family and self part weren't there. And so he thought it was his job, and it wasn't. But the 5 pillars, and it's interesting because when you talk about moving towards something or thinking in terms of, we do this everywhere, right? It's easy to think about just the next quarter instead of the next 2 years. Because that's the way people report things, right? What's on your quarterly statement? What's coming next? You think of we're conditioned with politics only to think in 2-year cycles, not even 4-year cycles, 2-year cycles.
I think we're conditioned to think in terms of 3 months or 3 years.
Yeah. And it's like, where do you want to be? What do you want the country to look like in 100 years? What do you want this business to look like in 100 years? But so we start with the 5 pillars. The number 1 is superpowers. And I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. You and I've talked about that. Quite honestly, you could use the DISC assessment too to really find out what are your internal, naturally occurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that when you start applying them, they're your God-given talents, you turn them into strengths. When you combine them with your knowledge, your skills, your passion, you start to turn them into your superpowers. And then you're better able to deal with what challenges you come. Those superpowers are like, they're like weapons or tools in your backpack, and you're marching up a mountain and there's a blizzard or a tree falls in front of you. Well, you're just going to use different tools more naturally than I am. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just how you deal with them and come to meet certain challenges. So you start there. The second pillar is vision. And we've talked about that, setting that long-term vision for where you want to go. What do you want it to feel like? What do you want it to look like, right? The next pillar is alignment. And I like to say that work-life balance is BS, because that assumes work and life are 2 separate things, and they're not. There's just life. And there's 3 facets to your life, as I said: work, family, and self. So you have to align those 3. They're not separate. Align those 3 in a way that works for you. The next pillar is outcomes. And the problem is a lot of people like to start with outcomes. So I'll do 5 pillars webinars, and we'll get there. And I've already covered superpowers and vision and the importance of vision. And we get to outcomes, and someone will ask a question. Well, Curt, what should my outcomes be tomorrow? I say, well, a couple things. 1, I just met you, so I have no idea. Secondly, do you have a vision? And if not, that's the exact problem I just talked about, because you're trying to set blind outcomes for tomorrow when you don't know where you want to go, right? And we do that, and what happens is our life becomes a series. I say you're like bouncing through life from objective to objective, like a pinball, without knowing where you're going. And I use that metaphor. People are like, oh my gosh, that's the way I felt. I thought my vision was in my 20s making partner, and then in my 30s making $100,000. And then I got to 40 and I realized, where the hell am I going? So that vision connects all the dots moving backwards. And the 5th pillar is flow. The hustle and grind pornographers would have you believe that it's all about grind and it's brute strength and it's hard work. There's nothing wrong with working hard, but so often people listen to that crowd. What happens is they're in the forest and they're chopping down trees and they're sweating and they're bleeding and they're not getting anywhere because they haven't realized that, brute strength and grind, they're chopping down 100 trees. What if they just step back and realize they only have to chop down 2? And they're chopping down the wrong trees, or hell, they're in the wrong forest. get in that state of flow, work smart. You can work hard while working smart, but you get in that state of flow where it's just like a symphony, where at the end of the day, you're like, yes, it wasn't like just walking uphill both ways, the morning, noon, and night. So those are the 5 pillars.
Thank you for sharing that. And I encourage all of you to read that book. It's very informative, transformational. It'll help you get a lot of clarity, not only for your work, but also for your life. And getting that state of flow is a lot easier when you have all those other pillars in alignment, because otherwise you can't achieve it. Because a lot of people are like, I just want the flow, just give me flow. Well, if you want just flow, go to Progressive. I'm pretty sure you can get flow for Progressive. I'm probably going to get censored just for saying that.
Yeah, right.
So if anybody has any questions, I would love to hear from you. Pop them in the comments. If you have questions about branding, what the heck can your brand do for your career? And I'll share with you, if you're still wondering that for any strange reason. Let's boil it down, make it very simple for you. Your career growth has much less to do with how awesome you are at your job, and a lot more to do with how well you connect with people. And a part of that connection is your brand, because your brand is everything. Your brand is everything. So in the virtual space is everything within this little square or this rectangle that you're speaking to people through. In person is everything you are in person. It is who you are. That's your brand. And I would have a question for you is, who do you want to be if you're still trying to figure that out? And, what is that persona? What is that person you want to be? And then ask yourself why. A lot, because sometimes we have ideas that we want. Like one of my clients, he's dead set on, I want to make lots of money. Okay, so let's talk about that. What does that look like for you? And where are you right now? And how can you achieve that? And when I tell him, okay, if you want to make lots of money, you have to do this, this, and this. And that goes directly against your moral and ethics.
Right. I was in that space for a while, and not only in my career, it's why I started my agency. But then the problem was I built my agency. I was kind of embedded. We were embedded with companies that didn't fit who I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, there's different form of ethics, right? There's doing things that are knowingly wrong and bad. But then there's just doing things that don't move you in the direction you want to go. Maybe it takes you away from, I wasn't being the best dad and husband I could be. And to me, that goes into ethics as well. It's not like the clients I were evil. Maybe some other people don't like them, but they weren't evil. But it was not ethical because it was not allowing me to be the person I wanted to be, which is another form of ethics, I think.
Right. Yeah. Your brand is everything you do. And when people think of brand, I know a vast majority of people just think of logos and color schemes and designs and websites or some sort of 2D experience. But really your brand is that, 5-dimensional experience. It's well beyond that. It's not only what you look like. I love my favorite green shirt here and my green background because it's kind of sort of my logos, but that's not who I am, right? You're not your logo. It's on your hat. That's awesome. But you're not your logo. You are you, and you embody you, and how you act, what you say, what you care about, how you give value. And most importantly, speaking that value to people is the most important thing, part of your brand, particularly if you're looking for a new job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another piece, Aaron, that if you're okay, if I can go down, because I know it's a topic near and dear to your heart. You and I are both DISC certified trainers. And one thing I've found, it applies to DISC and it applies to StrengthsFinder, is your behavioral style says a lot about how you're influenced and how you influence others. And that certainly goes into your brand, because if you're in a job and you think you hate it, it might just be that you don't have an appreciation or an understanding for your boss's behavioral style and vice versa. And that can cause friction, because if you're constantly upset and angry, then they're going to be angry with you. That doesn't help. And I have a client who recently, and not even getting to the DISC, but people being people-oriented or task-oriented. And about a month or two ago, I realized in that my wife is very people oriented and I'm very task oriented. And task oriented people, listen. And by the way, and I'm sure you get into this separately, but people, if you're people oriented, that doesn't mean you don't accomplish tasks, right? It just means that, like, I could have a marching band go by me while I'm working, and if I'm focused on my tasks, they don't even bother me. Right? Like if I want to get something done, I go in, I do it, and I get it done, and that's it. People oriented, like I noticed, like my wife is very affected by the people she meets in her day, for good or for bad. Her temperature goes up or down. Me, no, as long as I'm getting my tasks done, that's it. Well, what I realized with one of my clients was he was having we're building his side hustle. He really wanted to get out of his W-2, and his boss is driving him nuts, and oh my gosh, and this and that. Well, as we got into it, he said, we had the best conversation last week. Oh my gosh, we really clicked, and we got into it. And as we talked about what it was, they kind of bonded over complaining about another employee, right? Well, as we got into it, I really asked him a series of questions. His boss is very task-oriented. He's very people-oriented. Mm-hmm. They bonded over people, right? But as we go, he has a greater understanding now that his boss isn't an uncaring individual. She's just focused on tasks. And his boss probably needs to realize a little bit better, and now that he knows that, can communicate it, that he also likes to get tasks done, but he also likes to have a little chit chat. And so having that understanding of your behavioral style and the behavioral styles of others around you, it's great for conflict resolution, right? And reduction, but also it's a part of your brand because you emit certain energy, and sometimes people-oriented people can be around task-oriented, and you start emitting energy like you are an uncaring SOB who doesn't care about people. And it's not necessarily the case, and vice versa.
Yeah, being self-aware is extremely important, particularly if you're looking to grow your brand, grow your career, grow your business, whatever that looks like. And as extended this certified professional, we're both certified in DISC. I have actually some trainings coming up to focus on dealing with difficult people. And why they're difficult to begin with, they're actually probably not bad people. They're just different than you, and their listening style, their questioning style, their thinking style, how they take information, how they communicate, completely different. But yeah, I mean that is a part of your brand. Are you a people person? Are you more of just a get it done? Are you a grinder? What does that look like for you? And as a young professional, my brand, unbeknownst to me, was I was a steamroller. I got it done. Lord help anybody got it in my way. So we have to be careful what that brand is. And if you're struggling with that, a great way to do is reach out to some people and ask them, hey, what am I known for? And some people may not want to be honest with you.
Yeah. And anyone listening, take advantage of Aaron's trainings because it's so important, not just for self-awareness, but Aaron can train you. Listen, if you sit down across a desk or a virtual desk from a potential employer, you can learn to spot their behavior styles. And if you're someone who trends towards, say, telling stories and they're more of a direct behavior style, they're going to be annoyed with you. So you can right away start to determine. So it's self-awareness, but it's also understanding, and it helps in sales. If this person is direct, they want to get to the chase, but maybe they want a lot more information. Maybe down the line, there are people who are more concerned about process. You don't do that up front, but you got to understand those behavior styles. And I'm sure Aaron can help you really catch on to that as soon as you sit down, so you don't put your foot in your mouth.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Curt. Yeah. So we can wrap up. I'd like to wrap up and just chat really quickly about some of the top tips we've talked about. Is number one, if you're not quite sure what your brand is and maybe you're pivoting, understand where you need to go. Like what is you want to do. Get a very firm and clear idea what your priorities are, and at the fruition of your life, what do you want to say you've accomplished, and then reverse engineer, as Curt mentioned, everything after that. When you are thinking about growing your career and you're pretty solid on your trajectory. By the way, you have to have a trajectory. If you don't, you need to go back and figure out what that is first. And then we need to speak value, not process. All right. Absolutely. What other tips would you like to leave people with, Curt? I know you've got a podcast, you've got the book. what are the tips would you like to leave people with, make sure they get some value when it comes to fueling their career with their brand?
Yeah, really focus on that strong foundation. And we've talked a lot about vision and that foundation. Like, have the end goal in mind, have your outcome in mind, where you want to go, but also that end outcome you provide for your clients. The tools, tactics, and shiny objects of today, whatever that is, whether it's Sales Navigator or Twitter or whatever it is, they're not going to be here in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, whatever it is. But the sound principles we talked about today, talking about impact, clearly communicating that message, really targeting down who your ideal audience is, were the same 25 years ago. They're going to be the same in 25 years from now. The tools allow you to deliver it differently, but it's garbage in, garbage out. And so the tools don't mean a thing if you don't have the right message and right target audience. I have a number of free resources. If you text on your smartphone U30, YOU30 to 55678, it's all there. A lot of my stuff is geared toward business owners and entrepreneurs, but as we discussed, every single thing you'll find that I propose to entrepreneurs can be applied to your career search as well, because we're all in branding and sales, whether it's selling a product, a service, or selling ourselves in our career.
That's right. And in fact, in the coming months, I'll be launching a publicly available workshop. I haven't decided whether it's 1 or 2 couple of weeks, but it will be building your brand on LinkedIn as an influencer and using a lot of the same strategies that entrepreneurs use. And when I launched like just a snippet of this to a select audience, people are like falling out of their chairs, like, I've never seen this before. What in the world is this? Like, this is so cool.
Awesome.
So a lot of the same tools and tactics can be leveraged.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you are seeking a W-2 job or if you're looking to be in business. The same things are applicable, particularly when it comes to your brand, and that's extremely important. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody that has joined us. We really appreciate you. If you are watching the replay later, please do feel free to pop your questions and comments in the chat. We will get back to you. And if you love the show, please feel free to share this and share the love. Also share and help other people that are looking to grow their careers. And don't forget, stay tuned to next Tuesday at Career Coffee Chat Show, and the podcast, the Career Coffee Chat podcast, is on all the major channels. Curt, it's been a deep pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about how to get your brand in gear and fuel your career.
Aaron, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm glad we lasted. The Wi-Fi lasted. Yay!
Yay! That's awesome. Yes. Thanks again, Curt, and for all of you tuning in, we'll see you next week.